Hello everyone, a very warm welcome back to all of you. Today we are going to take the leftover portion of ecosystem structure which we have started in the previous class, and in that class we completed with the first component, the abiotic component. Now today our focus is biotic component. Since these terms are very much basic, I presume that you might have encountered these terms in the very basic classes. Uh, so for this reason I am moving a bit faster through these terms. Here we go. The biotic component or the living component. In this component you have different types of living organisms, and depending upon the nutritional relationships of these organisms, they have been divided into two broad categories. The first category is the autotrophic component, and second one is heterotrophic component. Autotrophic organisms are those organisms which are able to manufacture their own food material. Okay, and this autotrophic word is derived from two words: auto, which means self, and tropic, which means nourishing. That means those organisms which are self-nourishing. Okay, and they are also known as producers, or they are also known as energy transducers, because they convert solar energy of sun, they convert light energy of sun into the chemical energy of different organic compounds, for example carbohydrates, fats, lipids, proteins, etc. And these organisms, they convert simple inorganic substances like water, carbon dioxide into organic compounds, complex organic compounds, in presence of some organic substances, and these organic substances are enzymes. Okay, and depending upon the source of energy, where from they get the energy to synthesize food material, they have been divided into two types. The first one is the photoautotrophs, and the second one is the chemoautotrophs. Photoautotrophs are those organisms which have a green colored photosynthetic pigment which is known as chlorophyll. Okay, and this chlorophyll molecule helps them to trap the solar energy. That means those autotrophic organisms which manufacture their food material in presence of sunlight, and for trapping sunlight they have a photosynthetic pigment molecule which is known as chlorophyll. They are known as photoautotrophs. And in this category you have trees, grasses, algae, other phytoplanktons, and photosynthetic bacteria along with cyanobacteria, blue-green algae. Okay, and the second category of autotrophic organisms is chemoautotrophs. Those autotrophic organisms which obtain energy from oxidation reduction reactions to manufacture their food material, they are known as chemoautotrophs. That means those organisms which manufacture their organic food compounds by deriving energy from the oxidation reduction reactions of different inorganic substances, they are known as chemoautotrophs. Example is sulfur bacteria. And since these organisms, they are not very much abundant in any ecosystem, because the majority of the autotrophic component is represented by photoautotrophs, the chemoautotrophs are having a least significance in any ecosystem. Okay, now the second component is heterotrophic component. These are also known as consumers, because they consume the food material, because they consume the matter which is built up by the producers. And this heterotrophic word is derived from two words: hetero, which means other, and trophic means nourishing. That means those organisms which are themselves not able to manufacture their own food material, but instead they depend on other organisms for their nourishment. Okay, and these have been divided into two categories: macro consumers and micro consumers. First of all, macro consumers. Those heterotrophic organisms which consume large mass of the producers. Okay, that means they are having a large size. They are known as macro consumers, and it includes mainly animals which ingest other organisms, and they may be either herbivores, which are also known as plant eaters, or they are also known as primary consumers. Okay, I will repeat. You are having the heterotrophic component, they are also known as consumers, and the consumers are themselves, they are divided into two categories: macro consumers, and this category includes animals which ingest other organisms. Okay, and they may be either herbivores, that means those consumers which are plant eaters, they are also known as primary consumers. Okay, and this includes insects, zooplanktons, and animals like deer, cattle, elephant, etc. And the second category of macro consumers is carnivores. They are also known as flesh eaters, or secondary consumers or tertiary consumers. That means carnivores can in turn be divided into secondary consumers and tertiary consumers. Now, what are secondary consumers? Those consumers which feed on herbivores. For example, you are having grass, that is a primary producer. That grass is eaten by an insect, for example grasshopper. Grasshopper is the herbivore, and this grasshopper is eaten by, say for example, frog. Frog is the secondary consumer, and the frog is eaten by the snake. Snake is the tertiary consumer. That means carnivores are in turn divided into two categories: secondary consumers and tertiary consumers. In the example that I gave you, grasshopper is the herbivore, frog is the secondary consumer, and snake is the tertiary consumer. And the tertiary consumers are also known as top carnivores. Okay. Now, micro consumers. Micro consumers are those organisms which act upon and decompose dead organisms. That means those organisms, those consumers which decompose dead organisms, they are known as micro consumers. They are also known as decomposers, reducers, saprotrophs, or osmotrophs. Okay, you have to remember these terms. Micro consumers are those consumers which act upon and decompose dead organisms. They are also named by these, they are also known as decomposers, reducers, saprotrophs, osmotrophs, etc. And these organisms mainly include microorganisms such as bacteria, actinomycetes, and fungi. And these organisms, they break down the complex organic compounds of dead or living protoplasm, and they absorb some of the breakdown products and release inorganic nutrients into the environment. Thus, these nutrients are made available again to the autotrophs or producers. That means the microconsumers or the decomposers, they break down complex organic compounds of either dead organisms or living organisms, and they also absorb some of these components, breakdown components, and this category of organisms help us in the release of inorganic nutrients. They cause mineralization, and hence the inorganic nutrients get released back into the environment, which are again available for autotrophs or producers. The dead organic matter which is present in the environment, which is present in the soil, that is known as detritus or organic detritus. Okay, and by the action of these decomposers, the disintegrating detritus first of all results into particulate organic matter, POM, and then dissolved organic matter, which is known as DOM. And these two compounds, these two fractions, they play an important role in the maintenance of the edaphic environment. Okay, That means the proper conditioning of soil, the proper fertility of soil is only possible when you have decomposers in the soil. Okay, जो डेड ऑर्गेनिक मैटर होता है सॉइल में उसको हम बेटा डेट्रिटस बोलते हैं. एंड बाय द एक्शन ऑफ डिकम्पोजर्स that dead organic matter, first of all, it gets converted into particulate organic matter, POM, and then later on this particulate organic matter, by the action of decomposers, it gets converted into DOM, dissolved organic matter. And these two fractions, these two organic fractions, they are very much important in the maintenance of the edaphic environment. Okay. Now there are some specific terms, there are some specific categories of organisms, okay, which you have to remember. And these organisms are parasites and detrivores. Okay, those organisms which derive food material, which derive their nourishment from living organisms, which are their hosts, they are known as parasites. These are the special categories of organisms. Okay, their mode of nutrition is completely different. They do not consume the organism entirely. Instead, they live on other organisms and obtain nutrition from them. And these organisms are known as parasites. And the organism on which they obtain food, from which they obtain food, they are known as hosts. Excuse me. And the parasites may be either microscopic, and the examples are fungi, bacteria, and viruses, or they can be macroscopic. The examples are nematodes, flatworms, and some angiosperms, some plants. Plants can also act as parasites. Okay, I have already told you these definitions and their examples. Now the detrivores, those animals, sorry, this is detrivores and scavengers. Okay, I forgot to write here the scavengers. Those animals which feed on dead bodies of other animals, they are known as scavengers. They feed on dead bodies of other animals. They do not cause decomposition. This is the difference. Decomposers are those organisms which decompose the dead bodies of other organisms. Scavengers are those organisms, those animals which feed on the dead bodies of other animals. Okay, examples are vulture, carrion beetle. And those organisms which feed upon small organic fragments. The small organic fragments, which is known as detritus, which is present in the soil, that detritus is eaten by some organisms which are known as detrivores, and the examples are termites, earthworms, etc. Okay, this is all for the biotic component, and in the next class inshallah we will start with the energy flow in ecosystems. Till then, God bless you. Thank you all.